Hello, I'm David Matthews, and welcome back to our book study on Dallas Willard's book, Hearing God. We continue on today with Chapter 3, titled Never Alone. Chapter 3 begins with a story of an individual who goes to prison to do ministry there, and the reception that they get at the prison is startlingly and overwhelmingly positive because these people recognize their need and desire for community. Dallas Willard points out that we are all made for this community, and in fact we're intended to have it with God as well. One key line I find from this chapter comes on page 62, in which he says, "The basic idea here is that God calls us to a direct and fully self-conscious personal relationship with him, in which we share responsibility with him in the exercise of his authority. Exactly what does this involve, and how do we experience it? There are a number of forms and phrases involved, and I've described below." The first one he goes on is called to a relationship with God, and he highlights three different parts of this that are important for us to remember. The first is the blind faith. Blind faith is an important aspect of us to have a relationship with God. The recognition that God is always around us. As God has created the entire universe, it's important for us to recognize that he is always present. The next is to sense the presence of God. And what that is referencing is that God is spirit and God is around us. We can feel God's presence even when we cannot see him, because our spirit does touch God's. And then the next is to recognize that God is a God of action, meaning that God is always at work, and that we can learn to identify God at work in the world and therefore see his hand, knowing and being affirmed that we're not alone. The next thing is that he does talk about that our relationship with God is for our benefit and for who we are to become, for the benefit of the world. Dallas Willard does talk about communication through shared activity. We are called into ministry in the world for us and for the world. Through ministry, we make the world around us better, make the people's lives better, but we ourselves are also growing as well, both in our skill, but also in our relationship with God. We grow with friendships with people around us through doing things with them. Similarly, by doing something with God, a ministry, we grow in our relationship with him. We see and better understand how God works and how God operates. We grow in our understanding of him through these shared activities as well. Through this development of understanding how God operates, we also therefore grow in our friendship with God because we understand him better. We are called to these works not just for the benefit of the world, but for the benefit of us. I've heard so many times in ministry that somebody says, "Oh, well, I went out to go help somebody, but what I didn't expect was how much it would help me." Well, that's how God has created us. We are made for that. We are made to serve, but in serving, we ourselves are fed as well. Dallas Willard highlights a couple of points at the end of the chapter, mistaken views of how God speaks to us. God does not speak to us every single moment of every single day. And one of the reasons he doesn't is because to do so would just to create robots, and that's not what God wants. If God were to speak to us every moment of every day, there would be no room for us to be creative. And God wants that. God wants us to grow in that creative spirit that he's built inside each of us. Another inaccuracy is that everything is in the Bible. It's not. The Bible is true. The Bible is inerrant. I believe these things. But although it is these things, it doesn't hold every piece of information in the world. And so we need to be aware of that. Sometimes when we come against challenges in this world, we might not be able to find the answer in the Bible. Should I move to this location or should I move to that location? The Bible isn't going to spell out what city you should move to, because not every city is, of course, listed in the Bible. The Bible does have and does contain truth, but it does not contain every single piece of God's wisdom. The last thing we need to be aware of is that whatever last fallacy we need to be aware of, that we tend to believe, is that whatever comes is God's will. And that's not true. As Dallas Willard points out, the third mistaken view of how God speaks is commonly adopted and has much to recommend it in terms of peace of mind and freedom from struggle that it provides. But in fact, it amounts to giving up any possibility of a conscious interchange between God and his children. If I believe que sera, sera, whatever will be, yes, the future might be bright in that way of believing that God means good, therefore God will make good happen. Absolutely. But it removes any requirement, any interchange, any responsibility put upon me. It removes any relationship that I have, any ability I have to give good into the world and give good towards God as well. And that removes relationship. So Dallas Willard points out that that's something dangerous for us to believe as well. He then does go on to give some points for reflection, and I do invite you to join with us in watching that brief clip as well, as we discuss how my group responded to that. Have a great day, and God bless.